Welcome, everyone, to Catholic Sunday Scriptures in Context. This is a ministry of St. Paul Parish as well as the Augustinian Order. Today we are talking about the third Sunday of Advent, December 1617. Today we light our pink candle, signifying that the time of salvation is near. It's time to start focusing on joy. So our first reading today picks up that theme of rejoice, joy. It's Isaiah 61. It's probably written after the people had returned from their exile in Babylon. And they came home and saw this desolate land, and instead of being depressed about it, the prophet wants them to rejoice. And he speaks about that he's there to give them good news. He talks about that he has been anointed with the Spirit of the Lord. And this is really a poem of great beauty in the Hebrew that it's written in. And now, sometimes we wonder if the passages were written after the event had occurred, so to make it look like this had been predicted. But in this case, it seems that it is a prophecy that was yet to be fulfilled. And the prophet is very assured that one day Jerusalem would be restored and people would be returned to the Lord. And we can read ourselves into the prophecy because sometimes, we are like the poor or we are like the downtrodden. And to make his point, the prophet talks about a wedding and a plant. And these are two similes that are used. So here this word that the Spirit of the Lord is upon me and has anointed me. So this prophet is saying these words definitely come from God. He talks about the poor, the brokenhearted, the captives and prisoners. And sometimes, whether really or metaphorically, we are those kind of people. So this message is for us. And it's to announce that God will save us, vindicate us. And so then the two metaphors here, clothe me with the robe of salvation like a bride and a bridegroom, and they wore, as they do in the Greek church or the Orthodox church today, the bride and the groom both wear crowns. And then there is the analogy with plants that, while it looks like just a seed, eventually it will grow up and spring up, and the Lord will make justice and peace spring up before all the nations. Our second reading comes from Paul's first letter to the Thessalonians, and this is the conclusion of the letter. And he's giving them a series of imperatives, what they should be doing, reminders, much like, you might say to your child walking out the door, don't forget to do this and drive safely and all that stuff. And this is what Paul is doing here. And at the conclusion, he has a prayer for all believers, and eventually the statement that God will always be faithful. So rejoice, pray, give thanks, do not quench, do not despise, test everything. And I think Paul's saying that because there were so many false teachers out there. And imperatives, then he gives this prayer, may the God of peace make you perfectly holy, and may you entirely, spirit, soul, and body, be preserved blameless for the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. And God will be faithful. He will accomplish this. And our gospel this week, even though we're in the season of Mark, we start to turn to John. There will be several gospels from John during this year of Mark. And what's focused on here is the competition between the followers of John the Baptist and the followers of Jesus. And the gospel writer, John, makes it clear that the Baptist was not the Messiah, but that he came to prepare for the Messiah. And at the beginning of the reading here, which you'll see, he uses the Greek word martyr, which means to witness or to testify. And, as we believe martyrs or people who die for what they believe, we know that John the Baptist died for his belief that Jesus was the Messiah. So you see the word testify, testimony here. And John making this definitive statement that the Baptist was not the light, but that he came to testify to the light. And when asked, he said, I am not the Christ. So these were statements for people at the time that John wrote his gospel, around 100 AD. There were still followers of John the Baptist who were competing against the followers of Jesus. But eventually, um, the followers of Jesus outnumbered those and continued to preach Jesus as the Messiah. And then there is this difference between the baptism of Jesus and the baptism of John the Baptist. And the baptism of Jesus is the salvific one. This baptism is only for the forgiveness of sins. And John talks about his unworthiness. Please pray for peace in the Holy Land and in Ukraine. And if you think this is helpful to someone, please pass it on. Thank you very much.